Let's go over some of the worst shooting mistakes. The first one is one a lot of people don't ever think about, and it's the feet. So I'm a lefty. Normally, what I would recommend is a slight turn with the feet. Most coaches are gonna teach you to have your toes exactly squared to the hoop, but if you watch the best shooters like Curry, Kyrie, Kevin Durant, James Harden, they're gonna have a slight tilt. So they're gonna bring that shooting side forward. So if they're a righty, it would look like this. Lefty would look like this. I'm not saying that having your feet exactly straight to the rim is bad or a mistake. I'm just saying if it's more comfortable, get a slight tilt. The mistake would be going overboard on that and getting sideways here. Now it's gonna limit your options, because how are you gonna move this way and get into a shot? You have to make this really big turn. It just makes everything awkward. And then from there, you're also probably gonna have these weird habits with the ball placement. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. The next comes down to your starting position. Now with this, we wanna focus on the shooting hand. We wanna make sure we're getting under the basketball. So for starters, it might be more here, but you wanna start to get under it as you're bringing the ball up. What we really wanna focus on is this offhand. We don't want the guide hand too much behind the basketball here by the other hand, because then as you bring it up, you're gonna have another mistake, which would be getting a thumb flick. Now some players like Curry, people say he has a thumb flick, but he actually flicks slightly before the shooting hand releases, so it might influence the shot slightly, probably not a ton. Kyrie also has a slight thumb flick, and that's more around the time of the release. But generally, the more things we can eliminate that can influence our shot, the better, so we can have more consistency. So getting the offhand more to the front of the basketball, so that as you're bringing it up, it's a little bit more to the top or the front of the basketball, maybe to the side, but we don't want it behind the ball, because now we're in a position where it feels more natural to want to push with both hands. Instead, think about that guide hand as helping you bring the other hand under the ball and this one to the top, so you can keep it on that hand as you come up. That way, as you get closer to the release, you can drop that guide hand off and the shooting hand does the work as it should, and the guide hand's not influencing it. A nice cue that I like to think of though, so I don't have to think about where my hand is too much, especially in game, is that I like to have the guide hand pinky be the last thing to touch the basketball. If I'm doing that, it makes it a lot harder for that thumb to flick, because now that thumb is facing this way versus this way. Next mistake is something Kevin Durant does, and I'm gonna get into why he gets away with it, but it's bringing the basketball across like this. So I'm a lefty again. That would mean bringing the ball to the right side over to the left, or if you're a righty, from the left over to the right. And what ends up happening with that a lot is now your hand is here, meaning you're gonna release the basketball off your pinky or ring finger last. And there's a higher probability, since your hand's coming sideways like this, that there's an opportunity for it to come off different fingers almost every time you shoot, making it really inconsistent. Now the reason KD gets away with this, but is still consistent shooter, is because he's always coming from here, but he's getting his hand under the basketball before he goes into his final snap with his wrist and elbow. So he's here, gets it right under the middle of the basketball. So when he flicks his wrist and extends his elbow, that's coming off the middle finger or the pointer finger. More ideally, you want the basketball to go up in a straight path, straight up and down vertical. I will say it comes in handy for KD. If a defender's here, he can bring the ball over the top of him, especially with those long arms. But the majority of you aren't gonna have that advantage of having those super long arms, and it's probably just gonna make your shot more inconsistent, so it's best to try to keep that basketball going straight up and down. The next mistake is a big one for shot range, fluidity, and consistency, and speed. But before I get into it, if you want to improve your shooting fast, check out the free workout pinned to the comment. So what this mistake is having the basketball come like this action here. Now this can happen at a lot of different points. This can be from the starting point coming up, or some players, they'll bring it up here and then they'll do that, bringing it back here. What we want to eliminate is any motion where it's coming back too much. Now, if you watch the best shooters, there's going to be a little bit here just because that's our natural mechanics. If we try to come straight up, that's what a lot of coaches will teach, but I just find that feels a little uncomfortable and not quite natural. If you can get it down to being really close to that, straight up, that's great, but even watch here. You're gonna see the ball kind of make a slight dip here. Now, I'm keeping everything as tight as I can, right? So there's going to be a slight movement here, but we don't want this to be a big movement here, because then what you get is extra motion here to here, and essentially you're losing energy because you're coming here and then you're going the opposite direction, or I'm coming here and going opposite direction even more. One player you see shoot like this is Giannis. He brings the ball really wide. So to improve fluidity on the shot, try to think about having that basketball come as straight up as possible. Again, like we talked earlier, getting the offhand on top of the ball more and trying to get the shooting hand under will really help with that. But also don't think about having to cram it in super tight, because then that might start to feel a little awkward and unnatural. The next mistake is shot sequencing. What I just did there is a no-no. Also what I'm doing here is a no-no, with the exception of certain situations. So on the first example, I brought the ball up here and then I started loading my hips and my knees. What you want to do is load everything everything nice and tight. So elbows bent, wrist is bent, knees are bent, hips are bent. Lead with the ball slightly from there. So don't start here and bring the ball up a little bit faster than the knees are extending. And then what you want the end of the sequence to look like is as the knees are coming straight and the hips are coming straight, the elbow comes straight just slightly after, like almost the same time, and the wrist snaps just slightly after that. What that does is makes your shot more fluid, consistent, and powerful for range. And you might find that you don't need to jump as much, and that's why Curry's able to get such good range without jumping a lot. It's because this timing is just right. And that comes from focusing on it, but also lots of repetitions. But it's a key you can use that even if you're not really strong, you can still get range out of your shot without having to do some crazy stuff like a lot of youth players do to get range. They start messing their form up and going like this, pushing the ball more forward, getting rid of tons of arc, things like that. Now, as you come out further, generally you will lessen that arc, but this will allow you to kind of get more of that arc while still having your form intact. The other sequencing mistake is when you've got the elbow bent still completely, like 90 degrees or even more, and the hips are extended and the knees are extended, because now that timing gets way off and you're delaying the shot. The exception to this would be maybe if you're a little bit closer to the hoop, 15 feet, 10 feet from the hoop, because in there you can kind of be a little more fluid with your shots. You don't have to be so textbook with your shooting form, because there's gonna be little fades. There's gonna be, stopping on a dribble quick and your angle isn't perfect. That's gonna happen more there, and you don't have to try to get as much range and power, so that consistency with your form doesn't have to be there as much to be able to make the shot. But as you come out further, that timing and consistency has to be there to get that range without your form breaking down. Now, if you wanna take your shooting next level, check out that free workout pinned to the comments. And if you wanna see a hack to instantly increase your shooting percentage, check out this video right here. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on all notifications, and I'll see you in the next one.